A lot of times you would find that salespeople are good in terms of the numbers and driving sales, but in terms of, how they actually behave and conduct themselves in a work context, you would find that it's not in a manner whereby it's appealing, When you promote a salesperson to become a manager of others, they fail most of the time purely because they are boxed in a sense that they drive numbers and they ignore the people aspect now that they are managers.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Organizational Behavior with Siphiwe Moyo. We are back like we never left. What is that song? Since the last time I saw you. Maybe I shouldn't sing. I'm so excited to have a gentleman that I know personally, that I love and admire. We were colleagues only for 11 days. I wanted to get him to laugh. His name is Mpho Nkoane. Mpho is the head of human capital for the Momentum Group. Mpho, how are you, man?
I'm good, thank you, Siphiwe. And how are you?
I'm good. How was your week?
Sure, it was busy. So I flew to Cape Town on Tuesday, and then I came back. I landed on Thursday, and yesterday I had to actually attend one of my province's excellence awards. So
I saw you were swagging there.
Yeah, it was actually a busy week for me.
So it was a recognition function?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are people performing?
Definitely, we don't actually celebrate people that are not performing. So we were actually, awarding people that are actually doing exceptionally well.
Yeah. So good to have you, man. This is a very chilled podcast. You even brought a best friend. We won't show her on camera. Say hi to your best friend. Say hi.
Hey, Zoe.
So this is great. Mpho, for those people who might not know you, we see you in posters. Who are you? Where did you grow up? How did you end up being the person that you are today?
Okay, thank you, Siphiwe. So my name is Mpho Nkoane, as Siphiwe has alluded. Born and bred in the Free State in Welkom. So I think I actually came to Joburg purely to actually further my studies around 2002, 2003. So post-matric, I wasn't actually sure in terms of what to pursue. But luckily, I had a friend who actually took me through a career guidance where I actually wanted to get more information in terms of different career streams or different careers. And luckily, I knew from the onset that I'm not going to be a doctor or an engineer because of the fact that I didn't actually do maths and science. But I did accounting, I did business economics. So I knew that, humanities or management science would actually be best beneficial or suitable for me. Therefore, I also wanted something that is not more specialized, but more broad. And I think I fell in love with human capital or human resources by virtue of the fact that, you have different disciplines or practices within human capital, whereby you either can be an employee relations specialist, L&D specialist, or you can become a generalist. And I think because of that, I thought that will actually keep me busy, because I will be touching on different points within the human capital space. So that's how I actually landed in human, capital space. Therefore, I started with the National Diploma in Human Capital, and then I proceeded to do a bachelor's degree, and subsequently then I did an honors. Then I did a postgrad degree in labor law. Then I also did a MBA. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good, man. And education has seemed to be a very important thing for you. Why?
Sure. It's actually very strange because I wasn't the smartest guy in high school. I was average. But one thing that I take away from my uncle who passed away, who actually, paved the way for me. My dad passed on when I was fairly still young, when I was actually doing Standard 1. And I remember vividly that my uncle made a promise to my dad that he'll take care of me. One of the things that he said to me, he said, Mpho, in order for you to make it, you need to go to school. I don't care what you do. I'm happy to pay for your studies, but you need to make sure that you complete your studies. So I think I took that, and then I never looked back, I started small with a national diploma. I actually wasn't sure what's happening, but since I started working, I could actually connect the dots in terms of my studies and then practical exposure. And I think from that onset, that's when I actually really figured that in order for me to actually climb the ladder, I needed to further my studies. So ever since then, I actually, made sure that I equip myself, I develop myself so that I am able to actually get to really open those opportunities for myself with a qualification, behind me, And I knew also from the onset that I didn't just want to remain at the junior level or lower level. I wanted to climb. So that really meant that from an academic point of view, I also needed to make sure that I empower myself, to create that career path, Yeah.
No, thank you, man, and you are doing great. We see you, we see you everywhere, and just congratulations on your career. So what we thought we'll do when you have an HR person in an episode, I thought we would ask you the things that people love asking HR, but they don't get an opportunity to. So all the controversial, all the things that we want to just ask HR broadly, not in your current role, things that people have always wanted to ask HR. Let's have fun with that for the next 45 minutes or so. How does that sound?
That's perfect.
Is that perfect?
Yeah.
All right. Number one, let me go for it. Why are you guys always in the side of management? Why?
No, Siphiwe, it's not that we always in the side of management. We are business partners. We make sure that from a business point of view that number one, managers are fully equipped to be able to take business, forward in terms of meeting target or making sure that, that the business does succeed. And by saying that, we need to make sure that we equip leaders, whether it's through development or whether it's through managing people, etc. But we play a role whereby we are neutral, to create a balance between the relationship between the employer and the employee, And I know that, there's a perception that we as, HR, we support management more than employees, but that's not true. I think, employees, maybe sometimes there's a tendency whereby, if there's a misconduct, they don't really get to understand that the role of HR is to make sure that, from an employer side, you protect the employer because you contravened, the policy, so we need to follow the process. But in that process, we will still support you from a policy point of view. We'll still guide you as an employee to make sure that from a policy point of view, you are fully equipped in terms of your rights, how to prepare, how to put together a pack of evidence, etc. We don't just leave you and say that you're on your own.
You help employees prepare for disciplinary hearings against them?
Absolutely.
I don't believe you.
We do. It's our job. Remember, you have to be impartial in the process. So also, whenever employees refer the matter to CCMA, you need to show without reasonable doubt that you provided support. And the process has to be fair, in the inquiry. You don't come across or show up showing that you are actually supporting the employer only. So that's how we show up as HR.
Okay, that's interesting. And do you then only help the employees who come ask for help, or is there in the process you tell employees that we're also here to help you prepare well?
you need to be proactive and you need to make sure that you support the employee and the employer irrespective. You don't actually wait for them to actually raise their hand to say that I need help. I think as an HR practitioner, it's my role to make sure that I'm fair in the process and I provide support fully. You know, I also would actually, you know, make sure that the initiator as the employer, I prepare them in terms of pack of evidence, etc. But similarly with the employee as well. But because of the fact that I'll be privy to the information, I wouldn't chair the inquiry. I would actually go out and, you know, source for a impartial, you know, chairperson to chair the inquiry. But I'll provide you with the tools, guide you, ensure that you've got everything in terms of the information for you to be geared up for the inquiry.
Cool. There is a perception that when we're dealing with star performers who are bringing in the numbers in the business, that both the CEOs and the head of human capital end up protecting the star performer because I guess they are bringing in the numbers. So even though they are treating their teams badly, but because they're bringing the numbers, there is we generally ignore the behaviors and the culture that these people advocate or how they actually treat the people. Is that true?
I would say partly. I've seen it happening. And I think the bad part about that is that it does sort of, you know, have a negative impact in terms of culture, the type of culture that you're driving. Yes, it's good that you have your star performers that are bringing in the numbers, but how they show up and conduct themselves should be in a certain way that they are role models, you know, and they are held accountable, you know. And you need to sort of, you know, call them in and then, you know, sort of have an engagement with them and then, you know, call them out to say that we understand that you are a top performer. However, in terms of our values as a business, in terms of the culture that we are driving, this is not the right way, you know. And you provide a bit of coaching because remember, a lot of times you would find that salespeople are good in terms of the numbers and driving sales and, you know, but in terms of, you know, how they actually behave and conduct themselves in a work context, you would find that it's not in a manner whereby it's appealing, you know. And that's where coaching and mentoring comes in. That's where you actually, you know, do a bit of gap analysis to ascertain in terms of, you know, what could be their shortfall from a soft skills point of view, you know. Similarly, one of the examples is what tends to happen is that you would find that in terms of the transition, when you promote a salesperson to become a manager of others, they fail most of the time purely because they are boxed in a sense that they drive numbers and they ignore the people aspect now that they are managers. So you sort of have to hold their hand and provide a bit of coaching to say that you need to let go. You're no longer driving sales, but you drive sales through your people, not through you, because you are now a manager of other. If your people are successful, you are going to shine as well as a manager. You know, how do you actually get the best out of your people? Is by providing coaching, mentoring, making sure that you guide them, making sure that you go out in the field and support them to be successful as salespeople.
The team at the Organizational Behavior Institute is putting together this incredible conference called Building Better Workplaces. So this conference is going to happen on the 19th and 20th of February 2025. So I wanted to tell you all about it because I'm part of the team that is curating this conference. This inaugural conference is designed to bring together senior business leaders, HR practitioners and organizational behavior specialists to explore and address the most pressing challenges and opportunities facing the modern workplace. Let me give you an idea of some of the topic we're going to be discussing. Shaping the future of work. So we're going to have someone talking about what are some of the economic shifts, the political and geopolitical factors, technological advancements, and the broader external environment in which we find ourselves. We'll chat about emerging trends and models in leadership. What are some of the innovative leadership style, future leadership competencies, and some of the case studies from successful leadership practices from organizations that have effectively adapted to change and driven performance. Another focus area is advancements in organizational behavior. So we'll chat about some of the topics that are very interesting in the organizational behavior space: psychological safety, employee engagement, job crafting, which is a field we talk about a lot in the podcast, organizational cultural transformation. We'll chat about enhancing performance and well-being, that idea that well-being and performance are not mutually exclusive. So we'll have people talking about performance and productivity, deviant behaviors, which we've spoken about in the podcast. We'll chat about psychological empowerment, how to get the best out of people using the concept of psychological empowerment. And we'll chat about workplace friendships and motivation. So it's a really, really amazing, comprehensive conference. We're actually panicking that we're going to be oversubscribed very soon. So please look out for it. Some of the confirmed speakers that we're going to be having is some dude called Siphiwe Moyo. The team said you must never announce yourself first. I'm like, why? I'm announcing myself. So we're going to have Siphiwe Moyo from the OBI. We're going to have Graham Cotterington from Tomorrow Today, who's going to chat to us about the future. We have Professor Theo Felsman, who's an organizational psychologist from the University of Johannesburg. We have Andy Saliba, who's the Chief People Officer at Float Pays. We have the legendary Steph Duplessis, who is a culture expert, empowering people, igniting cultures. We have Sive Nodata, who is the Executive Director at 21st Century. We have Mahlaku Malulega, who is the lead for organizational effectiveness at Santam. We have Terence Taylor. Terence Taylor, if you remember, has worked for Google, worked for Facebook, and currently from the African Institute of Future Technologies. We have Dr. Wongiwelu Didi, who is a DI and transformation lead for Sub-Saharan Africa at CHEP. We have the great, my former boss, Lerato Mahlasela from Gibbs, who's the managing executive of corporate education. We have Dr. Mark Open-Lyle, who's the organizational psychologist, Thembiso Phakathi, who's an organizational transformation expert. And as you might remember, Thembiso was the director of consulting at Deloitte, and now on his own, he's still adding so much value. So it's a lot. I can't even, tell you more because this announcement is going to take forever. So if you want more information, please email info@theobinstitute.com and the team will get back to you, or just look at www.theobinstitute.com. Let's gather in that particular conference and let's have discussions about building better workplace. Most of our viewers in the podcast are leaders. So we may have a few HR people, but mostly are just business leaders trying to figure out this leadership thing. If maybe a managing executive, an executive comes to you as head of human capital generally, and they say, I'm struggling with that same issue. I have a star performer in my team. This guy really, really helps me. So if you look at the portfolio, he's bringing the most business, but he's struggling with the people side. He is not adhering to values and the behaviors and creating the wrong culture. Please help me, Mpho. What generally do you suggest?
Sure. I think that's a bit of a poison because you also want to get rid of key man dependencies. You cannot actually rely on one person to bring in the numbers.
Sure.
If you have a team of 4 or 10, you cannot rely on 2. I mean, you need to drive a high performance culture, and that should be applied across the board. So, people talk, employees are smart. If you give one employee special treatment, they will acknowledge and see that. And it sort of creates that sort of hate, and resistance because of the fact that there's a one favored person in the team, and it creates division as well. Ultimately, you would find that the rest of your team won't actually perform. What happens if your star performer is not at work? It means that the numbers are going to go down because he's not at work. But if you actually duplicate in terms of how they show up, all of them, you know that even your star performer, if he's not there, the numbers are still going to be maintained. So it's very important. You want to drive that culture whereby people, there's harmony, there's team effort, people are working together. There's that sort of, how can I put it, togetherness whereby people are able to work together. They drive the same culture and same behavior. You start having different conversations. And one of the things that I normally, advocate is, we call it vesting in the insurance industry, whereby you spend time with your team, vesting them, understanding where they are, where are their shortfalls and gaps, etc. How can you best assist them to be successful? You show them what success look like for them to be able to achieve success. You provide them with the tools, whether it's through skills, development, etc. You are there as a manager. That's how you drive high performance culture.
And that will reduce the key man dependency.
Absolutely.
And would you then maybe suggest coaching for that? So I'm hearing you say, to address the question that I've asked, firstly, try to reduce the key man dependencies by doing the things that you've just suggested, but having maybe a coach to help the former salesperson who's now a leader of others to develop the leadership capability and to develop that leadership muscle and understand the transition that has happened. Would that work?
Correct, yes. I think one of the things is, EQ is very important in these conversations, and I think it goes hand in hand with personal mastery. It's very important for people to be self-aware. And if people are self-aware and mature, when you coach, they listen. And when they listen, they are able to implement what you just coach them on, and they self-reflect, Yes, Mr. Joseph, you are good as a salesperson, but here are your shortfallings, and in order for you to, consolidate your career or your sort of, how can I put it, your competencies, this is what you need to do for you to be able to be successful, We don't want people who, yes, you are doing good, but don't be pig-headed because it's corporate, You need to be able to collaborate and work with people. And for you to succeed, there are certain things that you need to develop in for you to be more successful, Not as a specialist, but as a leader.
As a leader now.
Yes.
All right, cool. Are you enjoying this so far? Because I'm bringing all the fiery questions.
So far, so good.
So far, so good.
Thank you. Yes.
It's like many people would love to sit with an HR person and understand certain things, and they don't. So I'm acting as their spokesperson today.
Okay.
The pay gap between the highest person in the business and the lowest paid person in the business is receiving some really interesting attention in South Africa. In fact, people are beginning to want to legislate that. Have you ever thought about whether it is fair that CEOs are paid the kind of money? There are people who think there is no way one person should be paid that kind of money. But when I interact with CEOs and see the level of risk in their jobs and the level of thoughts and stress that they have, it feels to me like it's justified. But there are a lot of people who are like, nah, there's no way one person should be paid that much. What's your view?
Sure. I don't see any issue with their pay grade, to be quite honest. Particularly if you are a CEO of a bigger corporate. You are actually filling in bigger shoes, You are expected to deliver, and the targets are, exorbitant in terms of what's expected of you. You drive strategy, you report to the board, you need to go back to the board and then say, this is what I'm actually promising to bring, whether it's, 2 to 3 years, because remember, everything emanates from the strategy of the organization, and you need to demonstrate in terms of how are you actually going to measure some of the deliverables or the KPIs to make sure that you deliver on those. Now, that's a very complex job. It's not easy. Trust me. As I am head of human capital, I've got my own HR strategy. And for me to make sure that there's implementation, I need to work hard. Now, I manage about I've got about 10, 12 people in my team. Imagine a CEO is actually looking after the overall organization. But yes, he's got Exco underneath him. But if things falls apart, the board is going to actually look at the CEO. So it's a very critical role. And the manner in which we reward and compensate CEOs, I think it's absolutely okay. You know, they've earned it, they've worked hard. So there's nothing wrong with it. Yeah.
Are there any discussions in the HR circles around the gender pay gap? We've just had Women's Month in South Africa, and obviously now it's September and so on. But the issue of pay gap, it's not something that you and I can solve, right? But are there any discussions around, will it ever get closer? Will it ever get solved in your view?
Sure. You would find that in many organizations, it's legacy issues, you know, and also you would find that tenure also plays a role whereby a particular individual was in an organization for a very long time. By virtue of that, you would find that now and then they get 5% or 3%, which actually derails them from, you know, actually getting to parity or to where the role is paying. But here's the interesting phenomenon. We as HR, we are actually given a mandate to make sure that from a fairness point of view, we pay fairly, you know, and making sure that we reach parity. So we look at, you know, normally when we are at, you know, salary review, you know, season, we would look at income differential and say, who are the people that are actually below the minimum of the role, you know, and what are we doing as an organization to ensure that we bring them up for fairness point of view, which is fair. And we there's that thing of equal pay for equal job done. So we make sure that we stick to that. You know, if a role pays X, we need to make sure that we pay you X. If you are below X, we have a different conversation, and we start engaging with and collaborating with finance to say that is there money or a budget, you know, whereby we can actually tap into the kitty and then make sure that we address and, you know, correct salaries. And because of the fact that it's a fair thing to do, we do that. Automatically we correct, you know. But the good thing also where I see a lot of organization going to is to pay at the 50th percentile, you know, purely from a retention point of view, because I mean, you know, we're losing a lot of people that are sitting in critical roles purely because you would find that they are paid at 25th percentile and then competitors are actually poaching them to pay them between 50th and 75th percentile. So organizations are becoming smarter from a retention point of view to make sure that let's pay our critical or our high posts fairly to make sure that we are able to retain them, you know. So I think it's getting right, but it's going to be a very long journey, you know. It's not going to be something that's going to be addressed overnight. It's a journey. But every year there's an opportunity to actually address and fix, you know, and do the right thing.
I like that. I was listening to the group executive of Investec the other day, Fanny Titi, and he was really challenging his counterparts who are also CEOs to say one of the things he did when he got to be group executive at Investec, he looked at the lowest paid employee and increased that to around 250,000 rands per annum. And he said something very interesting. He said, as a business, they're always gunning to have the return on equity of 12 to 16%. And if it's more than 16%, he asks himself serious questions around, that means we might not be paying our people enough. That means we can go for people who are the least paid and bump their salary, which is very, very interesting. And I think it would just be great if most leaders thought around those lines to say, if I'm a CEO, I have a responsibility to lift as I rise, per se. So I'm glad to hear that there are many things that HR is also doing around this. Here's another controversial one.
Okay.
Why do you always want to know my current salary when you want to offer me a job so that you can give me 10% increase. What? Why can't you just pay me what the role is worth?
Sure. I think that has a lot of things to actually assess and to look at. This might be sort of a general statement, but sometimes what I tend to see is that how you are paid or where you are pitched in terms of your salary will ultimately determine in terms of the level you are. You know, this is what I'm trying to say. If your salary is high, definitely it will say that you are operating at a senior level, yes or no, by virtue of your salary. But I might be wrong, I'm generalizing. But it's also for us to ensure that you are, from a RAM point of view, in terms of the benchmark, we are thin range. Remember, when we start a conversation of talent attraction, we work within the budget. You know, every role has a certain budget, and when we start engaging in terms of, you know, career opportunities, etc., then I want to attract you for any position that I have in the organization. I need to be able to ascertain, will I be able to afford you, yes or no? Because if you are going to engage with somebody who's actually, you know, above, you know, the
Your
max
range.
or the range, it's pointless, you know, to have those kind of conversations because you can't afford them. But I would engage you to find out, in terms of salary, where are you, so that I can ascertain, can we have a conversation? Will I be able to bring you on board if I think that you are talent or you have the right capabilities to actually come and join our organization? So that's mainly purely for that.
Okay.
And also, I'll tell you this, a hiring manager, if they want to pay you good salary, they will definitely do that based on your capability, your skills, your attributes, your knowledge, and your experience. You know, the notion of the fact that, you know, I'll pay you at the mid, you know, that's not right, because otherwise you're not actually bringing in the best of the best. You know, if you are going to bring in the best of the best, you need to pay them fairly, a salary that is more competitive, because that's your value proposition.
That's so great, and I think you explained this so well. One of the things I discovered when we both worked for a certain bank at some point was that there were a lot of people. So we worked at I worked at the home loans division at some point, and at that time I didn't even know that you could negotiate your interest rates and whatever. I always thought, you know, you apply to a bank for a home loan, they give you whatever and you accept. And I'm using that one to say, even in the salary space, you probably won't say this, but I can, to say there is absolutely no reason why you should always, you know, accept the first offer, right? When you get the first offer, if you want to negotiate, you negotiate. And I think many people, including myself, when I was starting out, you just accept whatever you are getting, but there's no reason why you can't negotiate. There's no reason why you can't push back and see what you get. That does that happen a lot?
Yeah, I normally advise and tell people that at that stage, that's your first and your last opportunity to actually negotiate. If you accept, once you join, you won't get another opportunity to actually negotiate. You've got nothing to lose, you know. Normally, for me personally, I would start with a bigger number, you know, knowing that there's a buffer. They will drop it, but they'll get it to where I actually wanted it to be. So I would pitch high, but I know that they're going to say, Mr. Nkoane, no, but we can give you this much. Then I'll say, happiness, you know. So I encourage and advise people to actually, at that stage, that's your first opportunity, go for it, negotiate. You've got nothing to lose. It's either they can say yes or no, but nothing to lose.
I like that, because it is hard to negotiate once you're inside.
Yeah.
I think many people might not know this, but there are so many restrictions of how much you can get even if you are getting an internal promotion, there's sometimes a limit on how much percentage they can use. And to try and say, I'll negotiate after 6 months of taking the role, that thing never works.
No, it doesn't work. But also when you negotiate, remember, you negotiate, knowing and being confident in terms of what you bring to the table. You don't just negotiate, your skill must talk volumes, your qualifications, your capabilities. You need to demonstrate that you've been exposed. Particularly nowadays, we live in a very project-based, sort of work environment. You need to be able to demonstrate that you've been, part of the projects. You've implemented. You started something from scratch. You mapped out processes. You engaged with different stakeholders to build something together, because that's what the organization is looking for. Somebody who's going to add value and make a difference, not somebody who's a doer. Somebody who thinks out of the box, and change the game.
So you can't negotiate based on saying I have 6 kids.
No, that doesn't work, my brother. You need to demonstrate your capabilities. What do you bring to the table? As much as candidates, we look for that value proposition. I always tell people that when you buy a car, it's all about, if you go for a Mac, what does that Mac, bring for you? It's either its quality, interior, speed, blah, 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 blah. That's a value proposition. Similarly, when you buy a pair of sneakers, which is Nike, why Nike? Even when you join any organization, it's why this certain organization. Similarly with the organization, for them to actually choose you, there are certain things and competencies and capabilities that they look for in terms of whether you are going to add value, yes or no. So it's a two-way street.
This is probably one of my favorite chats, and I'm so glad that we are having this chat, because I'm asking. It's almost like I'm becoming a spokesperson for everybody. Mental health.
Yes.
After COVID, many organizations started having discussions around mental health. But do you think organizations are taking the mental health message seriously? Or they just realize that, look, it's something that we have to talk about now, but it's just lip service? What do you think?
That's actually a hot topic for many organizations. Because the reason why I'm saying that, remember, during COVID, for many organizations, it was a very unknown situation. Remember, at some point, we were told that we need to go and work from home for a week. We didn't know what we didn't know. And then subsequently, all of a sudden, there was a 21 days lockdown, Remember, we were not prepared from a technology point of view. We didn't know things or, apps such as Teams
and Zooms.
But we needed to make sure that there's business continuity, and to make sure that people are effective and deliver, working from home. So we've done a lot where I remember when I joined one organization as executive head of HR, I was requested to say that you need to do an audit to find out how many people have been vaccinated, how many haven't. Take stock of that, and then see, if it's conducive for people to come back, and, I needed to run a survey to say that how many people would want to come back and when in a particular week in terms of so there were a lot of things happening. In the same breath, people were actually feeling depressed. All of a sudden you are used to going to the office, but now you're sitting in your corner at home the entire day working from there. So it was that transition for a lot of people. But from a wellness point of view, I think banks are using iCares. So we started utilizing iCares a lot to say that tap into the services, whether you are depressed, stressed, because people were actually experiencing burnout, stress, etc. And I remember when we sort of came back, we introduced blended work or hybrid model. And we started, having wellness days, so that we help our employees to actually how do I put it? To start
learn some positive coping.
Absolutely. And we started doing great things for our employees and then taking into account that they're going through a lot. And now also, with the current climax of the economy, high unemployment rate, our country politically, etc., it does have a ripple effect, in terms of, how our employees are showing up. There's a lot happening, divorce happening, which ultimately impacts on employees' productivity at work. So it's how do we continuously engage and have conversations to find out our employees okay, yes or no, making sure that we tap in, we have wise and well in the organization that I work for.
Okay.
Yeah, tap into those services, making sure that we provide workshops, necessary interventions for people to get more information. If you're going through things, there's a psychologist closer to your area who would actually make sure that they invest and chat into you. So there's a lot that we are doing. And I know that one of the interesting phenomena is that a lot of organizations are considering to getting people back, full-time, 5 days.
Absolutely.
And employees are pushing back to say that, no. And some of the organizations were using blended work as a value proposition to say that we want you to come and work for us. It will only be for 2 days in the office and then the rest of the week you work from home. And people are saying yes. Remember, the other dynamic is that when COVID hit, people were given an opportunity to work in different provinces. All of a sudden, you can pack your bags, relocate from Joburg to Free State. But now, organizations are saying you need to come back. Your head office is in Joburg. Now you need to come back. You've made different plans. You're now staying in a different province. What do you do? How do you create a balance? So
yeah, it's a tough thing because so I get this pushback all the time. So when employees say stop organizing workshops on burnout and actually reduce the workload.
Yeah, I mean, people worked longer hours. You would find that even at 9 o'clock in the evening, people are still working. Yeah,
I think we're generally working harder than we did before COVID.
Absolutely.
I think there's just everyone is busy. And I guess now it's almost like a bit of a personal responsibility as well to kind of guard your time, learn those positive coping mechanisms, because it just looks like we're getting busier and busier.
Absolutely. Flexibility is no longer there.
Yeah. The other thing that started maybe during COVID that is a little bit controversial is the surveillance on employees and having these surveillance systems that were put in some computers for other companies to check productivity and so on. And maybe it was based on old leadership paradigms that people needed, because I can't see you, I must still see that you are doing your job. And it looks like there is interesting pushback against that. Of course, companies maybe have the right to do that, but maybe when you are doing that, unfortunately, what you are doing is you might just get the person to give you only the time that you are surveilling now, and unfortunately, when it's 4:30, then they stop. So we are not actually getting higher productivity with this surveillance, rather than leaving people alone to do their job, because then they give us discretionary effort and going the extra mile. Any view?
Sure. Yeah. In teams like that, you would find that it's lack of trust most of the time. And I always believe also it's legacy issues, or the type of, or the caliber of the team that you inherited as a leader. Because I always believe that, when you recruit, you need to recruit the best. You need to recruit people who are actually self-starters, people that require less of, sort of hold-handing. They know what they are actually doing, they are capable, and you sort of trust them. Because what that does is that as a leader, you end up not being able to take leave because of the fact that you always have to guard and, monitor your people, and you are afraid that if you're not there, they won't deliver or things will fall apart.
Wow. So it affects you.
It affects you because you always want to play a security guard, But when you have capable people, you don't have to stress. Things are running like all machine. Productivity skyrocketed up there.
I've never thought of that. That if you're having this surveillance, you are at the beach somewhere, but you must still check your phone.
You are security guard.
Ooh.
You don't enjoy your holiday. You can't spend time with your kids. You're always playing a security guard.
Ooh. I've never thought about that. That the impact of that is actually on you. All right. The other pushback that I sometimes get from people that I've always just wanted to ask an HR colleague is prioritizing external hires as opposed to building within sometimes. What are some of the causes? Because people are like, oh, I'm good enough to act. But when it's time to appoint, you go externally. What generally leads to that?
I think it's readiness. Yeah, people, you should be open and honest with yourself. I alluded earlier in terms of self-awareness and personal mastery. This thing of career path and career growth, it's something that as an individual, you sort of become humble and really understand where you want to be and associate yourself with the right people who would actually take you there. And you become somebody who listens and act on the advices that you get, And whether you get negative feedback or not, it's how you take it and then, change it into becoming a positive feedback so that it actually, propels or help you to move to where you want to move. I think we also take for granted things like coaches and mentors, small. We don't really see that for you to grow in a company, that's what you need to do. As you grow in your career, the other thing that is very important for you to be successful and to go up is having a sponsorship. A sponsorship is somebody who would actually say positive things about you in a room where opportunities are presented. Somebody who would make it happen for you to say, definitely Siphiwe would be suitable for this particular role. And then the forum would say, we fully agree, based on the interactions and, by virtue of having been mentored by this particular individual. So readiness is very important. What we do, to be fair, we have a talent management or a talent pipeline that we actually build within the organization. That's our internal talent. And in the beginning, it used to be a tick box exercise, but with me, in terms of how I run it, I make sure that we are able to measure and follow suit in terms of what we've agreed upon. If we are going to map people on the 9-box matrix this year, and then we said Siphiwe Moyo is on block 9, which means that he's doing good, or he needs a bit of development or improvement.
He's there. He's ready now. That one.
Next year when we have talent conversations, I'm going to say that Siphiwe was plotted here. What sort of interventions, coaching, mentoring, or development have we mapped out for Siphiwe to move to the next block? And what sort of support have we actually given to Siphiwe to be ready?
So good.
So that's how we get it right.
So good, because if I'm not ready now, and there's an idea that in 1 or 3 years I might be ready, the magic is what must happen between now and that time. And
you align that with Siphiwe's PDP, and you make sure that you track. When you have the talent conversation again, you are able to demonstrate and say that, so far, this is what we have done. Yeah.
And I also say, for me, and I know you probably won't say this, but if you're in an organization where they said you are not ready 3 years ago, you did everything that they said you must do, but you are still not ready. There comes a time when you also must wake up and smell the coffee. That maybe this particular division, sometimes there's no growth for me, and take your responsibility for your own career and go where you are celebrated. But unfortunately, sometimes people get so disgruntled and to a point that they now withdraw their performance, but that's not helping you. Now, when you withdraw your performance, it means you are not performing now, and you might be performance managed now, instead of saying, okay, if they can't see me, okay, I'll take my talent wherever they can see me. The other tricky thing now is there is an interesting phenomenon in remote situations where there are people who are working remotely and people who are working in the office, that there is an idea that people who are getting progression are those who come to the office more because of visibility and so on. Do you think there is a bit of truth to that? And do you think it's beneficial, even if you are working 100% from home, to show up in the office and increase that visibility to create internal networks and so on?
Yeah, I think I'll make a very sort of use analogy which is a bit different. I mean, we know in terms of introvert and extroverts. In a room, when you have a group of people and there's an extrovert, you would find that this cohort would actually, look at the extrovert by virtue of the fact that they are vocal, and an introvert is somebody who would just sit and observe and sit and listen, and a lot of people miss out in terms of what their capabilities are because they always quiet and sit. Similarly, with if you're working from home in your corner versus somebody who shows up in the office more, they've got 90% opportunity to actually engage with the CEO because they are able to see the CEO every day, and that's how they get opportunities as opposed to somebody who's sitting at home. Yeah.
So it is beneficial to come as well.
It is if it's required.
Do you regard yourself as an introvert?
I am, but the nature of my role requires me to get out of the comfort zone. Yeah.
I've always thought of you as an introvert.
I'm not.
No, not as an introvert,
Yes.
and I think you said you are.
Yes, I am.
But you've progressed a lot. So how does one navigate this introvertedness, because you still want career progression? How have you personally managed to progress so much when you are not the loudest person in the room?
Sure. I think I've mastered the art of knowing when to speak because that's powerful in a room. I would keep quiet, but when I open my mouth, it would be for a valid reason, and I would actually share a sort of a strong opinion or view, and that's how I think that actually worked to my advantage. And it gets people interested in hearing more from me. And now all of a sudden people would want to engage with me, as much as I'm an introvert. But also the nature of my role forces me to come out of the comfort zone because now all of a sudden you have to present in front of the board, you have to present at Exco, you have to guide senior leadership, So it sort of gets me out there and then, make me known, for the type of work that I do, and people feel comfortable coming to me. But also it works to my advantage because it has a bit of maturity where people can actually see that this one is matured. They can trust me with information, with confidentiality, with sensitive information, My EQ, I'm not just blowing my horn, but my EQ is there where somebody who's senior can actually align and, engage me. So, yeah.
This is so good. So we are leaning towards the close, but I want to segue maybe into career growth, career progression, still asking you those questions, but more more around, you can chat about yourself as an example as well, but just helping people with some tips on career progress, career growth, but HR related. So maybe in the next 10 minutes before we close, we can focus on that. Is that good?
That's perfect.
Okay. Do you believe that managers have favorites generally? And do you believe that there is something called almost fair type of favoritism based on performance, and therefore I can literally make myself one of the favorites by performing, if that makes sense? Remember, when we were studying labor law, they used to talk about fair and unfair discrimination, and I think about favoritism and that it's a little bit fair because it's just based on, I know if I give this person a job, he'll get it done. So it has become my favorite, not in a discriminatory stuff, but it's because he's just reliable. Do you think there's something like that?
Sure. There is, and it's natural. You sort of want to associate yourself with someone that you can trust and someone that you know that they wouldn't drop the ball, someone who would make you look good as a manager. Here's the reason why I'm saying that. I've seen it happen. And it happens across, whether it's in government or in corporate. As in when, as a leader, you leave one organization and join another organization. When you build your team, you bring people.
True.
Yes. So that happens a lot. And what tends to happen, when you bring in these people, the current team that you found there are automatically going to feel as if that you are having a favorite by virtue of the fact that you brought somebody, but not understanding that sometimes it could be personalities. You get along, you understand each other, and this person gets you, and they know in terms of how to deliver, in terms of your expectations. They get it quicker, the first time around. So it's not really favoritism, but it's working dynamic. You choose the caliber in terms of the people that you know that they'll make you successful, But also you don't make it bold to show people that you're really favoring, because as a leader, you sort of have to create a balance and be neutral, and, vest, or invest in all your team members, fairly so, Yeah.
I've observed myself that when I was leading a team, I think of 12, I don't know whether favoritism is the right word, but there was people who in my team did the things that I knew I was not strong at, and those are the things that mattered in my own KPIs. I ended up really relying on them, and therefore you protect them with your life because firstly, this person is dependable, reliable, but they're also good in the things that you are not good at, which I guess is a good leadership skill to focus on that. What would be your comment?
I think that's the smartest way. Even as a CEO, you're not good in everything. I mean, if you look at corporates, that some of the support functions are not considered as critical or as functions that are as important in an organization. And sometimes we as HC or human capital, we we are there, we don't bring in money, but they don't, and if we were not there, they would feel it.
Absolutely.
But disciplines such as IT, actuaries, process engineers, blah, 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 those are considered critical and serious functions within any organization because of, the specialized capability or skills that they possess. And those are, sort of disciplines that are always taken care of. It's not really about they are being favored. It's exactly what you just said, that because of the fact that they've got this niche, different, unique skill, they bring in something different, which, organization would actually be happy to have, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
Great. Internal mobility. Sometimes I'm good at what I do, and I'm a specialist, and but it looks like my manager is now holding me because I'm so good that I cannot move to other departments. Whenever they're calling him for a reference or so on, it's almost like they're holding me, and they're not telling people that I'm good, mainly because they want to keep me. Do you think that that happens, and what would be the advice to leaders who do that?
Yeah, it's like a pit bull holding on to a bone, which is not really nice. I think that's selfish as a leader. For me, I think I get joy when I actually see somebody under me who's progressing and doing well.
Sure.
And if people are knocking on my door to say that, we want to actually give one of your staff members an opportunity for growth or promotion, I get happy. I don't actually block them. I've worked with people whereby today, under me, they are actually doing very well. I think I saw that Andy Swambata came to your podcast. Andy Swa used to report to me. Whenever I engage with her, I'm like, Andy Swa, is it really you? I remember when you reported to me, you were fairly still, starting, but she's done exceptionally well, and I'm very proud of her. So I think that's very selfish, and that's the old mentality as a leader, to block people from growth.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yo, Mpho, this is so great. Another segue maybe towards the close, just to chat about you then. What inspires you? What keeps you going? What has contributed the most to your growth in your view? Because you've done exceptionally well.
Sure, you won't believe. I think when I reflect, I think when I started my career, I used to work with your wife, and I'm very grateful that your wife actually was one of the people that when I landed in one of the banks, that she was given that task to say that, coach this one, he's new. And the fact that your wife was so patient with me, I really appreciated that. And at that time, I remember our manager used to say to me, Mpho, you are destined for growth and for greater things. I was still fairly young. I didn't understand what she was saying. And I was like, I don't understand what you are saying. But eventually, I worked very hard. And I started growing, moving into different roles. And then one of the managers said to me, one day you're going to be my boss. And I was like, but what do you mean? You are my boss now.
Sure.
And I remember one day she knocked on my door. She said, I'm looking for a job. I was head of human capital at that time. I said, look, I don't have an opportunity now, but would you want to report to me? I reported to you. She said, yeah, I would report to you. I told you one day I'll be your boss.
Wow.
I think those are the kind of words that actually build me and showed me that I've got potential. And throughout my career, I've made sure that I absorbed positive material and also engaged or associated with positive people who would guide me, who would actually lead me and direct me in terms of where to go from a career point of view. So, and I would always make sure that, I'm a star performer. I would raise my hand in projects to get to learn, I remember I never used to like or enjoy L&D, but I was forced to come out of my comfort zone because by virtue of being head of HC, L&D fell under my portfolio. So I started engaging and getting more, knowledge in L&D, end to end. So engaging with different people, going to seminars, positive thinking, that really, got in me to actually really say, Mpho, if you want to grow and work hard to get there, this is the path, or these are the things that you need to do for you to be able to be successful. Yeah.
That is so great. I think people will now be trying to Google my wife, Jess. What have you done?
I'm so sorry, but I think she's one of the people that actually contributed in terms of when I started in my career.
That's nice. That's very sweet. Okay, so now I want you to imagine a fireside chat. We are closing now. I want you to imagine a fireside chat. You have a few people who are maybe early in their careers in corporate, and you are like a big brother, and you want them to do well, and so you are thinking about some of the mistakes that you've seen people make in corporate, and some of the good things that people have done in corporate. So the mistake have caused stagnation, and the good things have caused progression. And you just want to give them a little bit of advice for about 3 minutes or so. Here they are. Over to you.
Okay. I think number one, you always have to be hungry, you know. If you are hungry, then you will always, be anxious and try to figure out what opportunities are there within the organization. Utilize opportunities that are given. There's bursaries internally. There's opportunities such as learnerships, etc. Have a personal development plan for yourself and track it. Have goals. Identify leaders that can actually coach and mentor you. I spoke about sponsorship. Have people like that who would actually support you in terms of your career. Stay out of gossip, scannering, and office politics. That will definitely kill your career quicker. Go to work, deliver. Work hard, work extra hard. Be anxious, ask right questions. The one thing that a lot of people do is that they tend to want to work against their managers. I always guide people to say that this is somebody who pays your salary. You want to associate yourself with him or her. If there's a strategy, make sure that there's implementation from your side and you contribute as well. That's how you also grow. Build a solid, healthy relationship with your immediate manager.
Sure.
Because they are your sponsor.
Excuse me.
And talk about, your growth in terms of where you want to see yourself. Because if you get along with your manager, they'll support you in terms of growth.
Yeah.
They'll pay for your studies. They'll make sure that from any learning interventions, they support that from a cost point of view or budget, So that's how you will succeed in any organization.
I have a throat in my what should I do? That was so funny. I don't know whether we're editing that or we're keeping it in. I don't know. All right, Mpho, thank you so much. Final thoughts or messages you'd like to leave with our listeners? Maybe you can include, are there any exciting things that you would love people to know about or connect with you? If I want to connect with you, what's the best approach? Is it LinkedIn or is it anything? But you can link that with our final thoughts.
Okay, so I would encourage the youth of today to actually, study, invest in studying, going to university. I think nowadays there are opportunities from a funding point of view. I know that a lot of young folks are actually struggling in terms of funding or financial, resources for them to actually further their studies.
Can I interject a little bit there? But many people are seeing a lot of unemployed graduates and they're thinking, man, whether I'm educated or not, it doesn't matter anymore. There is no value in education. What would you say?
A lot of times what tends to happen is the type or a caliber of a degree that you choose. You need to be smart and speak to the right people in terms of where is the demand, But also, if you do your assessments, that should actually demonstrate or showcase your strength. Don't just go for engineering because you're thinking that engineering there's opportunities. Do something whereby you know that you've got a strength in, but choose a career path where you know that there are actually opportunities. Very interesting. When I engaged with my daughter, she's doing a second year at Vets. So I said to her, look, I'm in human capital and I have an opportunity.
I'm sorry, man. I don't know what's going on. I want to get that right. What happened to me?
Oh, are you choking?
I'm choking. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, it's probably spit or something.
So what must I do?
Drink a bit of water, then
Maybe sit
cough
back,
on
ne?
it. Yeah.
Yo. Is the aircon on?
No, it is on.
I'm sorry about this, man.
No problem.
We'll edit that. I don't know. So we're gonna start maybe from want to interject that education thing. I think you were saying the right degree and so on. Yeah, I think we'll start it from there again. Is it fine? Cool. Yeah, maybe you can go for it again, Paul. You were saying the right degree.
Yes, I think it's very important to make sure that you do a bit of research in terms of what type of degrees will actually open doors for you. So I was saying, very interestingly so, I was saying to my daughter that there are various, career streams or disciplines whereby now I think for me to advise her as a father to choose a career that will allow her to work both in corporate and to become an entrepreneur, which is where a lot of us are actually headed towards, so that you are able to create multiple streams of income. And also, if it happens that because of the economic climate whereby there are a lot of Section 189 happening, so retrenchments, you still can continue as an entrepreneur by virtue of utilizing your skills. So she's studying psychology. She can be a psychologist in corporate.
Absolutely.
She can be a
clinical
and then practice and have her own practice. So there are various careers whereby there are opportunities. And also in the banking sector, there are those whereby immediately when you finish, you are able to actually apply for a graduate program. That is a stepping stone into you getting a permanent opportunity. So it's just a bit of research there and then, homework to figure out what opportunities or degrees that will open doors for you, as opposed to, studying, something that won't actually allow you to actually get opportunities.
Sounds great. And then do interact with you? Anything that you would like to let us know? How do we find you?
On Facebook, it's Mpho Nkoane. On LinkedIn, it's Mpho Nkoane as well. And on Instagram, it's Mpho_Nkoane.
Okay. So this is the final closing. I know I've been threatening. This is your camera, your last advice to anybody. Look them in the eye, give them the best advice you've ever heard. This is the stuff that's gonna trend on TikTok and everything. So let's go.
So life is hard now. Things are difficult, and as a nation we are struggling. And I think a lot of people are going through the most. People are at the stage whereby they are about to give up. They're not willing to try anymore. But I would encourage you to remain positive, have plans, set those goals, make sure that you go for what you want, have the right people around you who would guide you and support you in terms of your success, and make sure that you equip yourself to be ready for opportunities that are out there. It's pointless that you are saying that there aren't any opportunities, but you're not fully equipped. Sharpen your skills, equip yourself, develop yourself so that whenever an opportunity comes your way, that you are ready. I think that's my advice to the listeners.
Thank you very much, Mpho. What an incredible episode. Thank you for giving us your time on a Saturday. We really, really, really appreciate it. It was absolutely beautiful. It is so spot on. Thanks for allowing me to even ask you some of the difficult questions that people are always asking HR. It was good to have you here. Everybody else, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Organizational Behavior with Siphiwe Moyo. That was Mpho Nkoane, and we are out. See you next time.